I have something truly ridiculous for you guys in this video. I've beaten Sekiro without attacking, Elden Ring without being seen, but nothing, I repeat nothing, prepared me for how much sanity I would lose doing this challenge. I decided to see how far you can get in Elden Ring using nothing but KUKRIS. Yep, KUKRIS, those throwing knives that most sane people use to annoy enemies from a distance. But no, not me. I decided to make them my main mode of attack. This run was an absolute train wreck. Not only did it take me months to make this video, but here's a little disclaimer before we begin. I do not finish the game. This is how far I can get using KUKRIS only. If that upsets you, then you can leave now. But you'll be surprised to find out how far I actually got. There were moments where I genuinely questioned all of my life choices. But hey, that's what makes this so much fun, right? So sit back, relax, and enjoy watching me cuck all of the Elden Ring bosses. Since I obviously didn't have any KUKRIs to begin the game with, I jumped off at the Grafted Scion and got Torrent as quickly as I could. I essentially beelined to the merchant in Lower Limgrave, and this merchant will be one of the most important aspects of this run, since he sells an unlimited amount of KUKRIs. Basically, as long as we had runes, we had access to KUKRIs. I sold a few items to buy my first set of KUKRIs. I went to Summon Water Village next to get the Green Turtle Talisman, and then I went to the High Road Cave dungeon to fight the Golem boss inside, since he drops the Blue Dancer charm. Since I'm only using KUKRIs and they themselves have no weight, I can pretty much take off everything like armor and weapons and maximize the damage increase you get from the Blue Dancer charm. Once I got to the boss door, I realized I had one KUKRI left. I went back, got some runes, did the Knight's Cavalry glitch and bought more KUKRIs from the runes. I also leveled up dexterity for higher impact damage of the KUKRIs. Before going to fight the Golem, I went to gather a few extra items to help with my damage output. I got the Physic Flask and grabbed the Strength Knot tier, and using the side passage next to Stormvale, I went to Liurnia to get the Dex Knot tier since KUKRIs scale with Dex and Strength. Although it can't bleed, the Golem wasn't too difficult since its attacks are really easy to dodge and the impact damage of the KUKRIs was actually pretty good at this point. After the Golem, I went straight to Margit just to test out the damage, and I actually ended up beating him on my first try. Yeah, it seems in the early game, KUKRIs are actually very broken, considering that most bosses are weak to bleed. The impact damage itself also wasn't too bad, of course considering the increased damage of the Physic and the Blue Dancer charm. I pretty much just ran through Stormvale to directly get to Godric, who only took me 2 attempts. After getting both halves of the Dectus medallion, I went on some sort of cuck-filled rampage after seeing how good they were against Margit and Godric, and just ended up killing random bosses for no reason. Yeah, it turns out you can kill quite a lot of bosses with just the KUKRIs. I went for Renala next, and I'll spare you everything beforehand, since it was just running straight through the academy, but eventually I reached the wolf, and this one was kind of difficult because of the wolf's evade. He's pretty quick, and the kukris are pretty slow, so I had to find certain moments where I could actually land a kukri. That being said, the kukris were doing a respectable amount of damage, and I didn't have to land many hits to kill him. After buying some more kukris, I went for Renala. Her first phase was more tedious than anything, since it always left me with less than half of my kukris for her second phase. You know, when you actually fight her. I tried using Golden Vow to increase my damage to her in her first phase, in hopes that I could start her second phase with a few more kukris in my inventory, but it still just wasn't enough. I entered her second phase with 12 kukris. I had to leave Renala for now, and instead made my way to the Altus Plateau, so I could use the Red Main Castle teleporter for the Radahn fight. Before going there, I picked up a few things, like Godric's Great Rune and the Dexterity Talisman from Millicent. To do this, I obviously had to defeat Commander Nile. Now, if the fight had taken place on any other part of the map, I wouldn't have been able to do it, since I actually ran out of kukris before he died. But since we were in a Scarlet Rot swamp, and I'm assuming Nile stuck the needle into both of his eyes, he kinda just walked into the geysers and killed himself. After I got the Dex Talisman, it was time to go to Red Main Castle and fight Radahn. Now obviously, I can't beat Radahn with just the kukris, and I'm not going to try. I did as much damage as I could, and just ran around and kept resummoning the NPCs, until he died. And if you say,
Meh, well, you didn't actually beat him with the kukris, did you?
well, I also beat Renala not long after, with just the kukris. And you only need 2 remembrance bosses to get into Leyndell, so... After Radahn, I made my way into Nokron to get the Mimic Tear Ashes. The only thing in my way was the Mimic Tear fight, which was very annoying, since tarnished NPCs dodge kukris exceptionally well. Now to make one thing clear, I am only going to use my Mimic Tear with no weapons at all, and no other consumables, so the only thing it can do is either heal or throw an unlimited amount of kukris. It can technically punch, but the damage is so low that I'm not going to count it. I can't exactly remember why, but I did end up doing this for some reason. I don't know, I just got bored probably or something. After some rune farming, this is the point where I fought Renala, so here's the full fight. I fight and kill Gilliker for the ritual sword talisman in the Altus Plateau, since at this point, I'm really trying to maximize my damage output because from this point on, the bosses have quite a lot of health. Okay, so at this point, I was genuinely losing my mind. I was stuck at the Draconic Tree Sentinel for at least 3 weeks. I tried to cheese him, I tried to kill him, I just could not do it. Out of sheer disgust and hatred towards the Sentinels, I even went back to Limgrave to kill this one, for no reason. I guess this made me feel slightly better, I don't really know. When I said I lost my mind, I was not joking. I even went for this putrid avatar for some reason that I also couldn't kill, triggering me even more. My next victim was the grafted Scion from the start of the game. This random Crucible Knight. And the super easy boss in Limgrave. After I finished my rage-fueled tantrum, I went back to the Draconic Tree Sentinel and just tried to straight up fight him. The issue with this fight, and essentially all fights after this, was the fact that I couldn't have any armor on to reduce the damage. My health was absolutely non-existent because I had put most of my levels into Dex, Strength and Arcane for the KUKRIS. And not only does he hit like a truck, but his movement is unbelievably versatile because of his horse. Not to mention, these KUKRIs may as well be wet paper aeroplanes with how much they miss and how abysmally slow they are. And if all of that still hasn't convinced you as to why this boss is just beyond stupid, watch this. I did end up killing him and put the levels into strength. Godfrey was actually quite easy, and he's also my favorite boss in the game. I put the levels into strength again and moved on to Morgott. My first try wasn't too bad, but I did use all of my KUKRIs and Morgott wasn't close to dying. After leveling up a bit and getting the Lord of Blood's Exaltation Talisman, I still didn't have enough damage to kill him. At this point, I was scrambling for a little extra damage. I was already so close. So after getting Margit's Shackle and a few extra levels, I finally had enough damage to beat him. Now I'm sure before you even clicked on the video, you were thinking, how the is he going to get past that one boss? The boss. The one boss no one really likes, challenge or not. The one boss where it seems Miyazaki went for a toilet break and some random intern managed to sneak in an entire dogshit boss into the middle of the game. That's right, the Fire Giant. I don't even have words for how many tries this took me. If you thought the Draconic Tree Sentinel was bad, the Fire Giant was just on another entire level of bullshit. And no, it's not just his 3 billion hit points worth of health, but his moves are just atrocious and not fun to play against, even when you're not doing a challenge. Now for those who will say something along the lines of, you're just bad, or get good, I even ended up losing my entire save to the Fire Giant. As if he isn't already the worst boss in the game, it's one of the only areas in the game where you can soft lock your playthrough and never load back in. After hundreds of hours, weeks of doing this challenge, I was soft locked out of my save because of where I turned my game off. That save was gone forever. However, you may have noticed the video is not over, and you are gravely mistaken if you think I will let the Fire Giant get the best of me. I started a new save with the same challenge and rules and did everything I just did over the last couple of weeks once again. I got back to where I left off, which took me over a month in total to do so. If you appreciate my insanity, please consider subscribing. So I came back to where I left off, this time at a higher level, and I still wasn't successful. I was actually nowhere near. I made my way to the Carrion Manor where I fought Latenna so I could progress Rani's questline for some higher level Gloveworts. Long story short, it still had almost no effect. And this was all using Alexander to help me too. I was about to end the video at the Fire Giant since I had already restarted the challenge and it was just taking far too long. But I remembered there was one way to get past the Fire Giant that didn't involve engaging in battle with him at all. Wrong warping to Farum Azula. And since I restored my playthrough and hadn't killed the grafted scion in this one, I still had the imp key you get from the 4 belfries. It took me about 10 minutes to get the wrong warp, after which I was at Farum Azula. You can see that the tree is still unburnt in the distance. I ran to the first grace point, and from there to the next compulsory boss fight, the Godskin Duo. Now obviously for this fight, I used sleep pots since they do no damage, but I also had to use Bernal. Technically, me and my Mimic are still only using KUKRIS for damage, so please let me have this. The fight wasn't actually too hard, it's just that I didn't have enough KUKRIS to finish the fight. So after using all of my KUKRIS to do as much damage as possible, and with my Mimic tier dying within the first 2 minutes, I put on the best armor I had for increased survivability and hoped that Bernal could finish them off for me. The next boss was Malekith, which was where I believe this run formally ends. After multiple tries and getting unbelievably close, I had to call it and admitted defeat. There just wasn't enough damage from the KUKRIS and the bleed was too unreliable. Even with 50 arcane, the bleed triggered too late, and with every bleed proc, Malekith's resistance to bleed would just go up. I did manage to do it with just KUKRIs, but I had to use Oleg, and since he's the only summon that can actually throw KUKRIs, I decided why not. Right, so I forgot to mention Gideon. Yes, he's that irrelevant. Moving on. Unfortunately, even with Oleg, I couldn't defeat Godfrey. He was just too aggressive and his resistance to bleed is unbelievably high. There is a way to defeat him, involving doing Shabriri's questline and Nefeli's questline to get them to help you in the end. But I didn't think that far ahead, and in my playthrough, Nefeli is now dead, and I am not replaying this game for a 3rd time, at least not for now. Even if I did defeat Godfrey, I know for a fact that I cannot defeat the Elden Beast. To be honest, I just wanted this challenge to be over, so that is where I called it. So, I guess you can get to Malekith using KUKRIs only, and maybe even all the way to the Elden Beast, depending on how you slightly bend the rules. This challenge was an absolute nightmare, and it started off as fun, but somewhere along the line, I think it started to cost me my soul. Every time I threw a kukri, a part of my soul went with it. If you liked this video, be sure to check out some other Elden Ring and Sekiro challenge runs I've done on my channel. If you would like to see more new challenge ideas and content, please subscribe, like and comment. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope to see you in the next video.